Great. And this morning, first of all, welcome everybody to Psalms in Hebrew and Comparative Translations. And I'm very excited to look at a very short psalm today. The last two psalms were 35 verses long, which it's hard to it's hard to hold all the themes of a 35 verse psalm in your head when you read it. But a 6 verse psalm it's no trouble. So we're gonna look at today's psalm. We're gonna talk about its themes and how it makes us feel. On our first reading through, I want us to be thinking about what what emotions rise up in us as we read Psalm 70, and what do you think the psalmist, what do you think was going on in the world of the psalmist? And if you were going to use this psalm as a prayer in your own spiritual life, how would you use it? And so I'm going to share my screen, and we'll start like we usually do with reading the psalm. So here we are, Psalm 70. Lamenatseach leDavid lehazkir. Elohim latzileni Adonai le'ezrati chusha. Yevoshu v'yachperu mevakshe nafshi, yisogu achor v'yikalmu chafatzei ra'ati. Yashuvu al ekev boshtam, haomrim heach, heach. Yasisu v'yismechu becha, kol mevakshecha, v'yomru tamid yigdal Elohim ohavei Yeshuatecha. Va'ani Ani ve'evyon Elohim chushali, Ezri umafalti ata Adonai al tiachar. And I'll read a few translations because when we're not reading 35 verses, we have the opportunity to read more of the translations. So here is the Revised Jewish Publication Society translation. For the leader of David, Lehazkir. I really appreciate, of course, the ability of the most recent JPS translation to sometimes not translate a word. For the leader of David Lazkir. I'm not saying that that's a bad translation choice. Sometimes a word doesn't actually mean its translation, it means something else. It has a technical term or whatever, but it amuses me. All right. For the leader of David Lazkir. Hasten, O God, to save me. O Eternal One, to aid me. Let those who seek my life be frustrated and disgraced. Let those who wish me harm fall back in shame. Let those who say, aha, aha, turn back because of their frustration. But let all who seek you be glad and rejoice in you. Let those who are eager for your deliverance always say, extolled be God. But I am poor and needy. O God, hasten to me. You are my help and my rescuer. O Eternal One, do not delay. Here's the King James Version. To the chief musician, a psalm of David, to bring remembrance. Make haste, O God, to deliver me. Make haste to help me, O Lord. Let them be ashamed and confounded that seek after my soul. Let them be turned backward and put to confusion that desire my hurt. Let them be turned back for a reward of their shame that say, aha, aha. Let those that seek thee rejoice and be glad in thee. And let such as love thy salvation say continually, let God be magnified. But I am poor and needy. Make haste unto me, O God. Thou art my help and my deliverer. O Lord, make no tarrying. All right. Here's the contemporary English version, which, as we've discussed, often is more of a paraphrase than a translation. By David for the music leader, to be used when an offering is made. And then the contemporary English version also gives a title to the psalm that is not in the psalm. God is wonderful. Save me, Lord God. Hurry and help. Disappoint and confuse all who want to kill me. Turn away and disgrace all who want to hurt me. Embarrass and shame those who say we told you so. Let your worshippers celebrate and be glad because of you. They love your saving power, so let them always say, God is wonderful. I am poor and needy, but you, the Lord God, care about me. You are the one who saves me. Please hurry and help. And we'll do final one for the conductor of David Lazkir. O God, to rescue me, Adonai, to my help. Hurry. Let those who shadow me be ashamed and abashed. Let those who delight in my hurt be driven back and humiliated. Let those who say, Aha, aha, be turned back on their tainted heels. Let all who shadow you sing and celebrate. Let those who love your deliverance say always, God is great. But I am afflicted and impoverished. God, hurry to me. My rock and my refuge are you. Adonai, don't delay. All right, so first responses, first thoughts. What comes up for you as we read this psalm? What emotion is stirred in you?
Well, it's blessedly short.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was written while he was running for king and hadn't been wasn't made king yet, because this business I'm poor and needy doesn't kind of strike me as being kingly.
Mm. All right. So Dave, David might have written this psalm earlier on in David's life. Could be.
Can anybody hear me?
I can
No.
hear you.
Okay. I can't get on in any way visually. To me, it doesn't sound like a psalm. It sounds like a prayer. And it does sound like David's on the run, or whoever is on the run.
All right. Say more about what the difference between a psalm and a prayer is.
Um, this just, in the sense of it being so directed to God, that it's a plea, and it's
Great.
such, and that's what sounds to me more like a prayer, and have a real, it has a real connection to God, whereas some of the other psalms uh, reflect all kinds of other things, nature, love, in a very gentle way. This is not at all a gentle psalm. That's my
Oh,
thinking.
all right. So yeah, Mishka makes a
Yes.
very good point here, which is that in the five verses of this psalm, there are some that refer to enemies or to those who seek my death, the death of the speaker. And there are verses in this psalm, the very short psalm, that talk about the ones um who seek God, right? The friends of the psalmist. But there are no verses that are directed to those folks. There are no verses, right? The entirety of the psalm, all five verses, are directed to God. The speaker is speaking to God. And it is true that in many of our psalms, especially the longer ones, there are some verses that speak directly to God, and a lot of verses where the psalmist is talking about other things like the architecture of Jerusalem or the dogs outside the walls, or right, like there are that we've been reading psalms that have other imagery in them that support the theme of the psalm. And this psalm is just speech. There isn't a lot of imagery, and it is just directed to God, referring to other people, but not addressing them at all. And while I'm not sure that I would say, I'm not sure I would characterize it quite the way Mishka did, where Mishka said, a prayer is directed only and directly to God, whereas a psalm might be directed to God and and contain other themes, other addresses, um other directions. I'm not sure I would divide it quite that way, because it's possible that we might find a prayer that does in fact address other things other than God, and things that feel more like psalms to us that in fact don't address God. Um eh, or feel more like prayers to us that are not directed directly. Anyway, my point is, I'm not sure I would exactly divide it that way, but I think that it really points to a very good insight, which is this psalm is directed entirely to God. Larry.
Oddly enough, this may be one of the most widely used Psalms of all the Psalms. There's a piece of it which I've been to several monasteries for for retreats. I'm sort of ecumenical, and at both Episcopal and Catholic monasteries, the brothers, before they begin their prayer services or their services, they phrase it this way: "O God, come to my assistance. O Lord, make haste to help me." And the leader is the one who says, "O God, come to my assistance." And all the brothers and the leader say, "O Lord, make haste to help me." It seems like a preface to prayer. It's like a recollection of self, reminding self of the world being this hostile, competitive environment, which does not necessarily wish you well, and God as always present, available, but needs to be stirred by the recognition by the petitioner of their need of God. So I think that this might be said somewhere in the world every day, multiple times. Just that last phrase, which is sort of the summation of the petition here.
All right. So Larry says, not only is this a prayer and not a psalm, right? Building on what Mishka said, but it is also one of the most commonly used liturgical psalms in the Christian tradition. That is, uh, in Christian prayers, this is often used as an urgent plea for God's help, and in some sense, as an introduction to what prayer is, which is an urgent plea for God's help. And so it is. Larry posits, and I have no uh, uh, I have no reason to think that he might be wrong about this. Larry posits that this psalm is probably used daily in Christian liturgy by some community somewhere in the world, and it is most often used with a kind of call and response, with it is sort of, it has a litany, it has a built-in liturgical use, or liturgical format, which is that the psalm itself seems to invite community participation, and it does so in a way that uh, engages uh, our understanding, or a Christian understanding, of what prayer is. And this psalm asks God for immediate action, it has a sense of urgency, and it also contains a reminder in verse 5, or what in most Christian versions is verse 4, a reminder that those who seek God will find joy. When I researched this psalm, I found that the sense of urgency is understood by many Christians to mirror the church's longing for Christ's return. And that makes it relevant for times of distress, for spiritual needs, and like Larry said, it is very commonly used in monasteries and during daily monastic prayers. I think that context makes the fact that it is not used in Jewish liturgy at all even more interesting, right? Or at least it raises the question for me, was this psalm so associated with early Christians? Is there an ancient tradition of Christian use of this psalm in prayer that the rabbis, when they were building the Siddur, decided to avoid using this psalm because of that association? We did look at another psalm like that, Psalm 22, right? My God, thou hast forsaken me, which is deeply associated with uh with the passion of Christ on the cross, right? With Jesus's crucifixion. And because of that association, the rabbis uh don't use that psalm particularly much. Although we did talk about how there was a really powerful midrash that connected that psalm to the story of Queen Esther and imagines Esther as the one who describes God as forsaking her, and in some sense that putting those words into the mouth of a hiding Jewish person in the Persian court, I think it itself was a response to the Christian use of that psalm, the early Christian use of that psalm. I mean, I can't prove that, and I didn't see it in other writings. And sometimes I say things, and they're just what my heart thinks or what my mind thinks, and I'm not, a scholar of psalms per se, so I don't know. I could just be completely wrong, but it feels true to me. And and in this case, I just think it's fascinating, given Mishka's description of this as a very prayerful psalm, that it isn't used in Jewish prayer at all. And there are some phrases that feel sort of close to psalms that we use. That you might have thought that, oh, such and such a phrase is connected to this psalm, but actually the phrases are just different enough that you can tell that the phrase that we quote is a similar phrase from a different psalm. So there were a couple of places where I was like, are you sure? Am I sure that this isn't quoted in our psalm? But in fact, those places are attributed to other psalms with similar verses. And we don't use this psalm as a whole at all. And we don't use it in part at all. And I think that given how urgent this psalm's message is, that is very, very very surprising in some ways. Nice. What other so I guess for me, and nobody had really said it, for me the biggest emotional invocation of this psalm is that sense of urgency. Did other people also feel that? Oh, Mishka, did you have something to add?
Yes, I do. I'm looking at the repetition of the beginning, let them. let is a real sign of being connected to God, knowing that this is something that God is quite capable of, because God is powerful and God is everywhere. And saying let them acknowledges that God can do that. Um, Whatever it is that could be in another psalm, this is very much a sense of urgency and knowing somehow that this is something God can do. And it's a my grammar is bad, um, but that uh, the writer of the psalm knows that God could be the or is the most powerful, and this is a more than a request; it's a desperate note um, to have God take care of my enemies.
All right. That's uh, that's really lovely. So the let is a way of translating what is called the jussive. Okay. Um, so in grammar, and I do have some grammar, at least as it comes to biblical Hebrew grammar. The the tense of the verbs here is they are um what we might call in English future tense, but biblical Hebrew doesn't have a future tense. It has an imperfect tense. And imperfect means that it refers to actions that have not been completed. And when you're a translator and you're looking at an action that has not yet been completed, there are several possible ways to translate it. You could translate it as such and such will happen, right? He will walk to the store. That is an example of an action that has not yet been completed. That's sort of the simple future tense. But because in biblical Hebrew grammar, it's not obvious that certain things will definitely come to pass. And we also have a concept of prophecy and a concept of prayer. Sometimes it makes sense to translate those imperfects using the English words let or may. So when you have the priestly blessing, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha from the book of Numbers, that we translate that usually as may God may God protect you, may God raise God's countenance to you, may God grant you peace. And the word may there is acknowledging that we don't know if God is going to grant you peace for sure, right? We can't translate that as God will grant you peace, but we instead soften it and we make it sort of a prophetic or a prayerful wish. We hope that God will grant you peace. May God grant you peace. That still translates it as an unfinished action. Um, and so the verbs in this psalm are, most of them, this imperfect tense, and the way that many of our translators have captured that sense of um, action that has not been completed, but is not obviously going to happen for sure in the future. At putting it in with the word let, or may, which I think very much captures that sense of prayerfulness. And Mishka, you immediately picked up on it, right? Prayers use the words let or may because it acknowledges that God has the power to do these things, but that we don't know for sure if they will happen in the future. Otherwise, they would be translated as they will be ashamed and abashed, those who seek after my soul, which I think would be another way to translate this psalm, and in some ways would make it feel less prayerful and more, I don't know, vengeful or something. That uh, there would be a certainty in it that the word let allows for some faith, some ambiguity, some sense of uh, acknowledgement that the speaker, the petitioner, is not in control of these actions. Mishka.
That there is a sense that, God, I know you can do this. Let it happen. Don't sit back. Let it happen. Use what you have as your power. Please just go ahead and do it.
Right. Right. Definitely a sense of haste, of urgency. Right, over and over, this very short psalm asks God to hurry. Hurry to my help. Make haste. Come quickly. Don't delay. Hurry to me. There's a, a powerful sense of.
Well, it's pardon that interruption.
No, go ahead.
I know you can do this. Just do it.
Yeah, that's that sense of urgency. Larry.
There's almost it's the connection. There's a connection between you and God that this implies that is not present in many other psalms. There's an immediacy as if you and God are in the same room, almost speaking with each other. There's an imminence to this that is different.
Mm. Yeah, and I do wonder if that sense of imminence is partially explains the Christian use of this psalm. I don't know. It's an oversimplification to say that Christianity's God is immanent and Judaism's God is transcendent, because Judaism believes in a God that is both immanent and transcendent, and Christianity has, of course, the immanence of Jesus coming to earth and living among people, and therefore being very immanent. But also, but Christianity also contains the images of a transcendent God. So it's overly simplistic to describe it like that. But I do wonder if there's a sense of imminence that was uncomfortable for some of the early rabbis.
It's more prophetic than rabbinic.
Yeah, you might say right. I yes. Another way of tapping into what it was that the early Christians saw in this psalm that the Jewish rabbinic authors of the Siddur did not, in spite of its right, in spite of its pith, right? Like we've talked about how challenging it is to really understand some of these longer psalms that we've been doing the last few times. And this psalm, it feels really relatable. I mean, easy to get your teeth into to understand what the meaning is. Barbara.
I've just been struggling with trying to I agree with Mishka, and I was trying to think of why. Marina, I'll be right with you. I'm in a class right now. Um yes, I'm in a class. Um the word let has a, despite his saying um hurry and do this, there's a sense of faith in the word let. talking to me or just a... No, I'm on a class, Marina, right now. I'll be right with you. Um,
You were saying that there's a sense of faith.
there's a sense of faith, I think. Um, Despite that he's saying hurry, hurry, um, it's almost like there's a sense of calm in the word let.
Hmm.
It's not a grasping
Hmm.
word. It's a put it in my hand. I know you can. You said, Mishka, I know you can do this, and I think the key is no.
Yeah. All right. So Barbara's saying what's interesting about this short psalm is that verses 2 and 6, or 1 and 5, the verses which contain the desperation, the plea for urgency, the haste,
Yes.
are
Mhm.
kind of in contrast to the sense of faith and distance, respect, understanding, knowledge that is contained in verses 3 through 5. That is to say, the verses are which do not contain that sense of urgency. Not only don't they contain that sense of urgency, but they seem to, in some ways, be so calm as to undercut the urgency of the other words. I wonder if that is a cultural association with the word let rather than a um a true description of the emotional tenor of the psalm. I don't know for sure, but
Ooh,
it
okay.
seems to me that what might be going on with that is that we have an understanding of what the word let means. That's part of why I went into all of that grammar about the jussive and how you translate
Mm.
the imperfect, is that it's I'm not saying that you're wrong. It might indeed be that there's a calmness or a faith that an equanimity that is contained by the word let, that but I actually think that in the Hebrew the the sense of urgency is pervasive because there's
Okay.
urgency in the beginning and there's urgency in the end. um the lets are more like a demand than they are like
Ah, okay.
uh at least to me, right? It sort of feels like the author of this psalm is saying, God, make haste, help me, don't delay, do it now. And then when you say let them be ashamed, it's not like I'm stepping back and letting God do this, or I'm having a sense of emotional equanimity. I think it's more like let them be ashamed, like with
Mm.
with that same sense of urgency. And to me,
Ah,
part of the power and the pith of this psalm is that because it there isn't anything extra. It is a psalm that is uh very clear, right? Let my enemies be turned away, let those who seek you rejoice, and don't wait around. Do this right now, right? Like the it all sort of comes together in that same urgent feeling. But when I look at all of these translations, right? I wonder, the New International Version uses may, but most of them use let. But the contemporary English version doesn't use may or let, except for once. It says disappoint and confuse all who want to kill me. Turn away and disgrace all who want to hurt me. And by leaving off the word let, it keeps the momentum of that urgency. And while I've often felt that the contemporary English version paraphrases and doesn't accurately translate, in this case, I do sort of wonder if not putting the word let there actually helps a modern English reader to feel that sense of urgency all the way through.
Mm.
That makes sense. Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
The word shadow, um, in some of the translations, what did that mean back in Hebrew times?
Yeah.
Um, I'm getting complicated levels of meaning in my own mind. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So some of the translations, specifically Richard Levy says, "Let all who shadow you sing and celebrate," which is verse 5. Yasisu v'yismechu v'cha kol mevakshecha. Yeah. I'm gonna look up and see why he translated that as shadow. It's a good question.
There's a presumption of light.
It's funny. When you read it, I didn't have that sense of urgency you all had. I saw this as the chronic condition of society sometimes, and it's just a plea.
Say that again, Gary.
I didn't necessarily when you read this, it didn't hit me as necessarily a haste, and there was something acute going on. I kind of viewed it as a chronic condition of man to have this kind of thing in human nature, and that this is a discussion about that.
Nice. Nice.
Mm.
So it
Mhm.
might not be it might not just be a sense of urgency. It might be just a sense of the acuteness of the condition. Um yeah, but I think those are very related in some sense. So here's what he says. He says, "Those who shadow me." He translated the word shadow uh for the word mivakesh, because he mivakesh means to seek or to request, which is why most of the translations say, "Let those who seek my life," but "let all who seek you." But what he was trying to do in Rabbi Richard Levy in Songs Ascending is he was trying to capture the sense of the sh alliteration, ashamed, abashed, uh, and shadow. Is he was trying to capture the the proliferation of shins in this verse in Hebrew. Mivakshecha, Yeshuatecha, um, uh, Mivakshe, Nafshi, um, Yevoshu. He was trying to capture the shins, and since the word Mivakshe Nafshi, the phrase "those who seek after my life," um, he thought that the word shadow captured that same foreboding sense of somebody
Ah,
who was seeking after you, in the sense of following or spying, a person with no good ends. So he was invoking that, but also trying to translate the sh sound, the alliterative sound that the Hebrew captures. And uh
wow.
and so he says, Using the same verb as in verse 3, the poet suggests a more positive meaning of those who shadow. To shadow can also mean to seek God for inspiration, as one shadows a mentor. So he used the word shadow because he wanted to use the sh transliteration instead of the word seek, which doesn't have that sh sound. And but he wanted to use a word which could both be understood, like seek itself. Uh, to seek one's life is clearly negative, right? That usually means to try to kill someone, whereas to seek God means to do something positive. And so he thinks that the word shadow can also be used in both of those ways, right? A shadowy person gives something sinister. To shadow your mentor is to learn from them.
Wow.
Larry.
There's also a closeness to a shadow. If you're in the shadow, you're there. I mean, you're not. There's not a
Yeah.
distance.
Ah,
Yeah, that's how like my immediate thought was exactly what Larry just said, that he must have meant shadow in the sense of trying to connect that immediacy, like for something being in your shadow or something shadowing is like being very close together. But you know, when a translator who obviously knows that mivakesh means to seek or to request and is choosing the word shadow anyway, I had to look it up because he does put notes in his book, and I wanted to see what made him choose that word. He also translates. He added in an I comment. He added in an I in verse 6. That wasn't clear in the Hebrew, and nobody else said it, right? But
yep.
I am afflicted and impoverished. And he did that to connect it to the end of the previous psalm, Psalm 69, um, where this same phrase, va'ani, but ani, ani, ani with an aleph means I, ani with an ayin means impoverished. And he writes there, as a commentary to verse 30 of Psalm 69. But I am impoverished. The Hebrew is va'ani ani b'choev, right? The first ani, meaning I, is spelled with an aleph. The second with an ayin, meaning impoverished or afflicted. The pained expression I is intended to reproduce the sound and poignancy of the Hebrew, right? He's capturing the fact that by choosing that particular word to mean poor or impoverished and to put it right next to the word ani, which means I, it produces this kind of crying sound, a crying out sound. And so one of the things that I really like about his translation is that he is very, very attentive to the sound of the Hebrew. And he tries, sometimes with more or less success, I think, he tries to translate in a way that will sort of mimic that sense.
Mm,
Larry.
I think this
wow.
redoubles Gary's point that this is the universal condition of man, saying "oi, oi, oi." It's a real woe. I am in a condition of woe and depression and sadness and trouble, and I need your immediate help, God. That it's not a specific event, it's a general statement of humanity and relationship of man to God.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that the form also leads to that same conclusion, right? The very fact of this psalm being so short increases its sense of immediacy and in some sense universality, right? The sense of human condition, right? When you have more to say, it's often to specify the situation. And when you have less to say, it can be applied in many, many different situations, right? The enemies are not doing anything in particular here, right? They are just enemies. And we don't want them, right? We want them to be pushed back, driven away, right? Let the enemies be driven away can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts. It's sort of the difference between vice president on your business card and vice president for acquisitions and mergers of the, First Colony Bank, right? Like if you just have vice president, that says way more and it means much bigger than with all the extra words. Sometimes when we have extra words, uh, it the specificity of those extra words distracts uh, from the power of what it could be with fewer words. All right, let's look at so as I mentioned, there are no connections of this psalm in the Jewish liturgical tradition that I could find. Uh, I tried, um, but we don't use this psalm, and I didn't I didn't recognize any of the verses from prayer when I was reading it out loud. Which is that's my first go through. I read the psalm out loud, and I do a pretty good job of I'm like, oh, this is from this prayer, this is from this prayer. And then I go through a concordance that connects prayers to verses from Torah and Tanakh. And so then I try to I go through each verse and I try to see, is this linked to any prayer?
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
couldn't find any linkages. So there isn't a lot to say there that we haven't already said. So here's Richard Levy's sense of spiritual applications. The pressing hurry and don't delay suggests that the poet experiences God as distant, or at least that God's redemptive presence is distant. This suggests language for our own prayers when we feel that danger is imminent and we need to feel near to a God who has the power to save us. How does God save us, deliver us? Sometimes by opening our minds to possibilities we had not thought of, in which case it is appropriate not so much to feel proud of our own insights as to thank God for them. Sometimes through other people who arrive to present options for our deliverance. When we try to make ourselves feel better by uttering maledictions on those who are pursuing us, as the author of this psalm does, it feels better only for the moment. We wish that a malefactor come to shame. The wish that a malefactor come to shame can be seen as a healthy desire for justice and for remorse on the part of the oppressor. Yet it is better to rejoice with those who are virtuous. And perhaps we may then understand verses 4 and 5 as a turning, a repentance by the shamers, based on their appreciation of how we have handled the adversity that they have thrust upon us.
Mm.
So I think there's a real
Example.
real beautiful lesson there
Mm.
in that the the psalm begins with a call for urgency, a plea for God's help, and then let my enemies be ashamed. Let those who turn on let those who have this mocking language be turned back on their tainted heels, and then let all who shadow you sing and celebrate, right? Let all who seek after God sing and celebrate. Maybe those are actually end up being the same people. Maybe the prayer has been answered and they are turned back from their uh malevolent ideas, right? Turn back from being our enemies. Maybe right in the middle of this prayer, we have seen their redemption firsthand. And then it closes with an additional plea for urgency. God, you are my refuge, don't delay.
Wow.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Shoot.
Um, is there anything in our Siddur that is so like this psalm? Again, I sort of see it as a very uh, close relationship with God, but I don't. But it feels kind of negative in that way. Um, I wonder because I don't, from my un, uninformed sense, get that there is anything like this. That all of the prayers, all of the psalms that are used, don't have that kind of difficult, immediate uh, sense of needing to solve such a difficult problem. I'm not sure I made sense with that, but
Well, I think what you're saying is, um, well, is two things. One is, you know, this psalm, we talked about how this psalm is used in Christian, especially monasteries, in Christian liturgical worship, uh, daily, and it's not mentioned in our Siddur. And what I heard you sort of wondering is anything like this in our Siddur? Does our Siddur have any sense of urgency? Does our Siddur have any sense of
Ah,
immediacy? Or is that like an emotional uh prayer experience that isn't in our regular service?
right.
And I think that's an interesting insight. I, I, we have Rabbi Eliezer says about prayer, Tfilat hakeva ein bo tachanunim, right? Uh, the set prayer does not have true supplication, right? And Judaism is a religion of set prayer. We have set times for prayer. We have set words for prayer. We have a prayer book, and our prayer service is reading through that prayer book, right? And
Mhm.
so it's very set. And Rabbi Eliezer says, if you're doing set prayers, if you're doing prayers by rote, ein bo tachanunim, there is no supplication there. And one thing that's interesting is that we actually have a section of our service called tachanun, which means supplication. And it it happens, we don't do it on Shabbat. So most conservative Jews who come to shul only on Shabbat have never heard of Tachanun because we don't do it on weekdays. I mean, we only do it on weekdays. We don't do it on holidays or Shabbat. And in many conservative communities, we don't do Tachanun at all, even on weekdays. Like our community just skips those prayers. But I think that sense of urgency and emotion is deeply contained in those prayers, which are designed to let you say your own words within them, and which contain Psalm 6, which is a psalm about the emotional experience of prayer, that every night we cry into our pillows and that we have this sense of deep longing for a deeper connection to God. And the place where Tachanun fits into the service is right after the Amidah. So the Amidah is the most set part of our set prayer, and the rabbis instituted right after it a section where you're supposed to put your head down on your arm and say your own supplication prayer that is not set. And I think we miss something spiritually when we skip over that section. Rabbi Spitzer.
I thought of another place that there's an urgency, in addition to Tachanun, which also, um, in the prayer for the sick, we say when we're actually listing names and praying for people who are sick, we add in Aramaic, Hashta Bagalav Isman Kariv, which means right now, God.
Right.
So there's a place where we're praying from from the depths of our heart for somebody specific, and we're telling God to hurry up about it.
Yeah, that's a great example. Anyway, I do think that both of those examples, the example of Tachanun and the example of the prayer for healing, actually reinforce Mishka's general point, which is that the the Jewish prayer service isn't particularly interested in urgency. It's interested in having a lot of words. Let's let's say these same words over and over and let them drip into the stone of our hard hearts, and let them like a waterfall soften our stone, right? Let the words and the values that we say over and over and over and over and over have this cumulative effect. But the Jewish prayer is very interested in the long game. It's interested in that cumulative effect that it has on a person, and it's not really, I think, about this kind of urgency that is described in this psalm, which is not to say that, Rabbi Spitzer's example and my own example aren't moments of urgency in our service. But I do think that Mishka's right? That generally speaking, our Jewish prayer service doesn't capture this sense of immediacy. Good. Well, we'll close off with a thought by Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb. Our psalm takes us one step further and much deeper into the psyche of a leader. In the previous psalm, we learned of the difficulty the leader experiences. As if physical danger was not enough, the leader suffers unbearable loneliness, constant criticism, and assaults upon her self-esteem. Right, so we talked about that when we did Psalm 69. No wonder that she often resents the burdens of high office and comes to regret the choices she made which led her to the position. Our psalm asks us to contemplate the plight of the leader after she has been victorious, after she has accomplished her leadership mission. One would think that at that point she could put the burdens of office behind her. We assume that surely, having achieved her objectives, she would no longer be subject to opposition and embarrassment. However, the leader is often forgotten. She comes to be seen as a figure who may have had historical importance once upon a time, but who is no longer relevant. Accustomed to center stage, she must now accommodate to oblivion. This insight is conveyed by Rashi in his remarks on the mysterious phrase in the very first verse of our psalm, a psalm of David lehazkir, to remember. In the Midrash on Psalms, I came across this parable. A king was once angry at his flock of sheep. In his wrath, he drove the sheep into the wild, dismantled the barn in which they took shelter, and dismissed the shepherd who tended them. After a while, he calmed down. He sought after the flock of sheep, found them, and gathered them back to him. He rebuilt the barn for them to again take shelter there. But he did not remember the shepherd and abandoned him, forlorn and forgotten. The shepherd protested, "The sheep have been returned, the barn restored, and I have been forgotten." So too, at the end of the previous psalm, we read, "For God will save Zion and rebuild the cities of Judah." There, the barn is rebuilt. The descendants of God's servants shall possess it, and those who love God's name shall dwell there. There, the sheep are returned. But I, the shepherd, am not mentioned. Am I not to be remembered? Thus, our psalm begins a psalm of David lehazkir, to remember. David begins our psalm with a prayer that he be remembered. He foresaw the restoration of Zion and the rebuilt cities of Judah. He envisioned the return thereto of the Jewish people, but he was pained because he was glaringly absent from this prophetic picture. Was he not to receive the credit he was due for his role in this dramatic achievement? Many a leader has experienced similar ignominy. This indeed is a common tale, but true. History is replete with the tragic stories of how these leaders struggled with this great frustration, typically in futility. David dealt with it in the way he knew best. He turned to the God he knew as a just God and pleaded for justice. He asked to be remembered, not to be cast into oblivion. He begged that a place of honor be reserved for him at the ultimate victory celebration. But I am poor and needy. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not tarry.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, I'll close by saying I think that this particular reading of this psalm does what I was saying before, that if you make it so specific and tied to a specific person, you sometimes lose the universality of it. And uh, I think he's trying to universalize the experience of leadership, right? Any leader could experience this, which is fair. But I also think that the psalm, it doesn't seem to me, where 69 was clearly about leadership, I'm not sure that this one is so clearly about leadership. It feels to me that this psalm is really about relationship and
You lost
connection.
your voice, Rabbi.
You lost me?
Seems to.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess it was a good time to lose me. Hopefully this will come back and I can say goodbye. Ah, good. You lost me at a good time, I think, because we're closing out. All I wanted to say was I think this psalm is really much more about that sense of connection and immediacy to God than it is about leadership. But it's nice to see the uh another approach. All right, we will meet again next week. And the following week, but as I said, then there will be 2 weeks, one where I'm in Israel and the other where I'm in Florida. And then so the next 2 weeks on, then 2 weeks off, and then we'll meet again at the end of February.
But
Thank you, everybody.
Rabbi, which one is the promised land?
Well, definitely Jerusalem and not Mr. Walter Disney's version of the world.
Where are you staying in Disney World?
We're staying in we didn't get the tickets in time to afford the Disney hotel, so we're staying at a close hotel that has a shuttle to and from the
Yeah.
Oh,
park.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good day,
Rabbi,
everybody.
Yeah, Barbara.
Rabbi, one last question. Where do you find Tachkanoon? Where can I find it to read it?
Well, did you get that Siddur?
Yes.
It's not in there.
Oh, no, I didn't get, no, I didn't get, she told me I couldn't, that there was a reason why I couldn't have it yet. So I didn't get the Siddur.
Okay. Well, it's not in that one because that one's a Shabbat morning Siddur, so Tachanun isn't in it. But if you
I bet
stop
I,
by, I'll show you.
okay.
I can copy off the pages from a
Oh,
different Siddur. And really
that'd be lovely.
soon, the weekday version of our Siddur is coming out, and then we'll be able to have it there too.
Beautiful. Okay.
All right.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to buy a copy of that.
The weekday version?
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought 2 copies of it, and they told me it would be here in October, and it hasn't gotten here
How much
yet.
are they going for?
I think I bought it for $40 each.
Terrifico. I'll add on postage, send you a check.
Well, no, I mean, I bought them for myself. I will, but when the congregation buys for the congregation for us to use on weekdays, we'll put out an email that says if you want a personal copy, you can join with us.
Right, in the CAA weekly announcements?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
thanks.